Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldron. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you? How you doing? It is Wednesday, February 27, 2019. Shook it up a little bit there with the how are you rather than how you doing. Can you believe it? Oh, it's going to be a wild and crazy day. The president is abroad still. Hey, the president's abroad. Oh, that's what we could say after we elect a woman president finally in 2020. I hope. We'll see. There are many fine candidates, of course, of all sorts. So I don't want to exclude anybody. I'm just saying it's a possibility. That'll be the big joke, I guess. Ho, ho, ha, ha. So hilarious. So it's hilarious that Donald Trump is using the experience abroad to make Dick Blumenthal jokes. That's hilarious as well, and super dignified in front of the foreign leaders and foreign press. Foreign press, of course, apparently, this is big news today too, on hand for the private Donald Trump Kim Jong-un dinner. As you know, all meetings with Donald Trump involved have a meal. They all center on meals, and so they had a dinner together, which the North Korean press was allowed to attend and observe, but the United States press was excluded from. The apparent excuse here being, well, the American press asks questions. The North Korean press does not, and we wanted a quiet, intimate dinner because we're in love. As you know, we've traded love letters and we want things nice and quiet. So, whatever. President, never had any understanding of sort of American culture or how to be a human. And so, not surprising, I guess, in that sense. And I knew he wouldn't be able to resist making a joke about Blumenthal. His tweet this morning was apparently, I have now spent more time in Vietnam than Da Nang Dick Blumenthal, the third-rate senator from Connecticut. Parenthetically, he adds, how is Connecticut doing? And I don't know. We'll ask Greg how Connecticut is doing. Seems fine. His war stories of his heroism in Vietnam were a total fraud. He was never even there. We talked about it today with Vietnamese leaders, which is exactly how you want to portray America and its veterans and fighting forces with the Vietnamese. It's true, he has now spent more time in Vietnam coddling communist dictators, in this case a North Korean one, than just about anybody, almost certainly more time there than anybody who had actually spent time in the military has done. And most people who had experiences in Vietnam or even in the military during the Vietnam era, although there was a time that Donald Trump did have a military experience during the Vietnam era. He went to military school, but somehow decided that afterwards, when I could have put it all on the line, the military life wasn't for him after all. Besides, I have bone spurs, the whole thing. And I don't begrudge anybody ducking out on a very unpopular and very deadly war, I suppose. But, to spend your time making fun of others as though he had done some heroic service or had even served in the military at all after graduating from military school. That's the part I don't understand. I mean, if you go to military school, it wasn't his choice, certainly, but graduating from military school and then saying, military, I've done my time. I'll be so good at the military, if I'm ever president, your head will spin. But, okay, whatever. Personal choice. So, I don't know whether he mentioned to the Vietnamese leader he was tittering about Blumenthal with that he has in the past, of course, compared their lovely country to his personal struggle with venereal disease. But I suggest that as a topic for him to discuss if he runs out of things to talk about at the next dinner. Many other crazy things happening, of course. Apparently, I didn't realize that Michael Cohen began testifying before Congress over on the Senate side yesterday, and he will continue with his testimony today on the House side. Supposedly today is he's got a real bombshell slated to drop. Oh, look at, well, here's Greg Dworkin. Hang on just a second. Let me answer Greg's call. But I happened to notice here, Justice had sent me a note that says Trump was kicked out of the military school. Is that right? And then the military-themed school accepted him. Is that right? I thought he just went to New York Military Academy, and that was just sort of a military-themed sort of place. I didn't know that there was a kick-out situation from a military school. But I guess it doesn't surprise me. Anyway, at one point, he liked dressing up in uniform and parading around, and I guess that's why he loves parades so much. And what drove him to be inspired to invent the July 4th parade, which I guess maybe we'll see coming up this time. Anyway, Michael Cohen back in front of congressional committees today, prepared apparently to drop some bombshells, including copies of checks, personal checks, in fact, from Donald Trump, which he says were reimbursements for his hush money payments to, I don't know whether this one was for Karen McDougal or for Stormy Daniels or for somebody else, but it's a $35,000 check, which does appear to be drawn on his personal account, which is maybe the first time I've ever seen that for Donald Trump. And Matt Gaetz from Florida took this as personal license to lash out at Cohen, and he has since been informally censured, I guess, by the world, and now says, it was all a big mistake, and I'm deleting my tweet, and we'll see whether there's ever any consequences for Matt Gaetz. So far, a life lived entirely without consequences. I don't expect that to change in the next 24 hours, but we'll see. And many, many other things happening as well. Greg Dworkin has collected them all from third-rate Connecticut or whatever it's about. How's Connecticut doing, Greg?
Connecticut's doing great, as far as I can tell.
All right. Well, maybe you just don't have a keen enough eye to know how poorly Connecticut is doing because something said by the guy who graduated from FAO Schwartz, standing in front of the Nutcracker, all dressed up. Yeah, I know. I get that part. All right. Well, he's got a very smart brain, as you know.
So they say. I'm just sending you a copy of the Matt Gaetz tweet.
Yes.
We got 2.5 stories today, right? So we have Trump in Vietnam restricting the press from asking him any questions, claiming it's because he wants to be nice to little Kim.
Yeah, sure.
But in fact, he doesn't want any questions about Michael Cohen because, of course, Michael Cohen is the huge story. And The Price is Right, I guess, starts at 10 a.m., and that's when the hearing is. He's already released his statement, and those checks, that check that you mentioned was for Stormy Daniels, and there's at least one other. And I saw a claim but didn't see the check itself. That there's not only the one that we know that Donald Trump signed, but also one that Don Jr. and Alan Weisberg, the CEO, signed.
That one I haven't seen. I saw a copy of one.
Apparently two. Right, I haven't seen that, but I saw a reference to it.
Okay, well, that'll be fun and interesting when that comes out. It doesn't say on the memo line for hushing Stormy Daniels, though, so.
Right, and then the half story, of course, is the Matt Gaetz piece. I just sent you his tweet, since deleted, as you pointed out, where he said, "Hey, Michael Cohen 212, that's his Twitter handle.
Right.
Do your wife and father-in-law know about your girlfriends? Maybe tonight would be a good time for that chat. I wonder if she'll remain faithful when you're in prison. She's about to learn a lot."
Yes,
that's what he said.
Very dignified.
Which was, of course, as you point out, dumped all over on Twitter to the point where first he doubled down, then he tripled down. And even Mark Caputo was writing in Politico Florida this morning about how that's par for the course with Trumpists, and they just double down all the time. And then he said it wasn't witness tampering, it was witness testing.
Yeah, he did say that. That's not a thing.
He did say that, and there was a very, very funny, it's short, before we get to the longer one about what Michael Cohen is, but the short piece on Matt Gaetz is, one is from Popat, the legal analyst on Twitter. Dear Representative Matt Gaetz, are you represented by Federal Criminal Defense Counsel? Let me tell you why I ask. It sure seems like you're threatening Michael Cohen that if he testifies before Congress, you or people aligned with you will bring out embarrassing details about him. And let me just send you so you can read right along with us.
You want me to read it with you? I'll do it at the same time.
There's a whole bunch. Yeah, we can do it in tandem,
okay.
like synchronized swimming from the Olympics. There's a whole bunch of obstruction statutes, sir. And if you're threatening to reveal embarrassing information to deter a witness from testifying before Congress, I think you need advice about whether you might be violating one or more of them, and then gives a reference.
No.
The U.S. Department of Justice seems to take these obstruction laws rather seriously and know a lot of them.
Well,
you may try to invoke the speech and debate clause, citing your Twitter account as an official act. Now, that has something to do with Congress and what they're allowed to do, I guess.
Yes.
In certain cases, you're allowed to go to the floor and say stuff that you can't say anywhere else. I guess that's what he's talking about.
Right.
It has to be on the floor. And he wasn't on the floor when he did this, as far as we know. You may try to invoke the speech and debate clause, citing your Twitter account as an official act. Ask your lawyers about that. I hope you're not relying on it. In short, lawyer up, dirtbag.
Well, I don't know why he would believe that he needed to lawyer up. He has never really needed it before, and he's been in trouble with the law before, but there's been zero consequences every time. I think we're talking about 7 times, as a matter of fact. I think it's 7 DUI stops for Matt Gaetz. And, I think he's just never learned about consequences, and so thinks there will be none from this, too.
Rick Hasen, the elections expert lawyer, tweeted a much shorter version of this.
Oh.
Basically, he tweeted, Putz ipsa loquitur, which made me laugh. I'll have to explain. Remember, I'm not a lawyer and I don't speak Latin, so I had to look all this stuff up.
Well, yeah.
But roughly translated, it means the dickhead speaks for itself.
So
now, in law,
that's
there's this thing called res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. And as an example, for example, if you're doing a negligence case, and this is why I'm laughing, because I saw this on Wikipedia when I looked up and said, what does this mean? So I look it up on Wikipedia, and it says in certain cases, like negligence cases, the act and thing is just so obvious you don't need to talk about anything else. And I'm scratching my head, but they give an example, and it's a visual example, and that's exactly to the point. What they do is they show an X-ray of somebody's chest, and there are surgical forceps in the X-ray.
Uh-huh.
That some surgeon obviously forgot and left in the guy's chest when he was in there, or she was in there.
On purpose.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so you look at that and say, well, that doesn't belong there.
Right.
And so the thing speaks for itself. You don't have to explain how it got there. In fact, you can try. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The very fact that it's there proves negligence because it's not supposed to be there.
Right. Not at that point, it isn't.
Right. So anyway, I just thought that was very funny. Putz, I didn't have to look up. I knew that.
Yes, and it's not Latin.
No, it's not Latin. It's New York.
Okay.
So we have that, and as you point out, Gaetz had to backtrack, and Pelosi very subtly said, there's an ethics committee for that, and if you go to ethics committee for doing stuff like that, things can happen to you which aren't good. You can get at the very least stripped of your committee. At the very worst, you can be censured or thrown out of Congress. I mean, it's a real threat.
Yes.
It's subtle, but it's real.
Well, they should expel him, but they won't have the votes for that.
Right. Well, same with Steve King, though. They can strip him from committees and do other things and make him relatively powerless.
Right. But
and so, we'll see how that happens. Is he in legal jeopardy? Oh, lawyers are talking about this on Twitter. Probably not.
They will not find it worth doing, nor will they find a Justice Department willing to do anything about it. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, just about every prosecutor I follow, or former prosecutor, there's a lot of former prosecutors, who are talking on Twitter, who basically say, yeah, that's really not legal, but no, I wouldn't prosecute it.
Yeah. Well, once again, he skates. That's another lesson in life for Matt Gaetz. Do it again.
Do it again. And that's what Mark Caputo was saying. He's from the Panhandle. It's Joe Scarborough's old district. If you think it's going to hurt him there,
Yeah, right. True. None of the rest of it has. And his apparently his dad is a...
It's like Steve King in Iowa, only in Florida.
Yeah. He's got... Matt's dad is a Politico down there in Florida and has been instrumental in keeping him out of jail all this time.
Right. So as far as the DPRK stuff goes, of course, the whole summit annoys me. The whole thing is for show. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. Everybody's worried they're going to give away this story. And yet the media are absolutely feeling obligated to normalize it and pretend look, here we are in Vietnam. Look at this restaurant. Look at all these flags. And, what they should be doing is saying Donald Trump will be planning on meeting with, or has met with, since it's already happened, murderous dictator Kim Jong-un, who killed his uncle and has hundreds of thousands of people in gulags, and then called him his best friend. But that's not the way they do it.
Oh.
They leave out the part about the murderous dictator and the gulags.
Well, yeah, they do. I'm not certain why they do that.
I don't know why they do that. Anyway, so then Kim, of course, gets everything he wants because he's on the world stage and he has no intention of giving up nukes. And Trump looks like a jerk and isn't like that, so he doesn't want anybody seeing it. So as Caitlin Collins tweeted, multiple U.S. reporters are blocked by the White House from covering President Trump's dinner with Kim Jong-un because of, quote, sensitivities over shouted questions, end quote. That after U.S. reporters were booted from their workspace because Kim Jong-un was staying at that hotel. So Trump is basically doing everything possible to stifle a free press.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the story that's coming out of North Korea, not any of the stuff that Trump's going to say is aspirational and look what I did. I got to have a meeting and nobody else could do that. You got the meeting because nobody else was stupid enough to do that because that's what Kim wanted.
Yeah.
And again, that's how it should be covered, media. Come on, do your job.
I'm surprised that they're not being at least a little more critical. It's the situation of them staying in the same hotel was reported last night. I guess one of the reporters actually there in Hanoi saying that they spent weeks setting up the press filing center in a nearby hotel. This is it's a big logistical project to take on, and when you have a summit, or even a fake summit like this, you gotta rent out space, and the press corps pays for it. Not the people in the press corps, but the press organizations pay for outfitting a room with internet connections and satellite uplinks and workspaces and phones and all of that stuff. And then it turns out, as they reported, this thing was thrown together so last minute that they didn't even realize that they had put the press filing center in the same hotel where Kim Jong-un was staying. And he, being a North Korean dictator, said, no press in my hotel. And they had to uproot the whole thing, tear it out, and hastily put it together somewhere else. And on top of that, they're not allowed to cover anything or ask any questions. They're all like, well, he's doing some diplomacy and stuff, looking all dignified, whatever.
And we better help him with the propaganda here. Whatever they tell us to do, we're going to do. Because after all, we took the trouble to send all our people there, and we got to get something for our money's worth.
I guess that's really basically it. And meanwhile, Trump only provides the only sound bites he's providing the press with are idiotic. I mean, there is just like everything sounds so stupid. What did he say last night to Kim Jong-un? I've known a lot of rich kids who've grown up as screw-ups, but not you. You're fine. Murdered his whole family, whatever.
Yeah. But, not like my kids.
Yeah, right.
My kids are like totally screwed up. I can't believe how good you turned out.
You're okay. Those Menendez kids, they're misunderstood.
Yeah, but my own, I mean, Ivanka, well, we don't even talk about her, and I forget the names of the other ones.
Yeah, right. I have some other ones. One of them I had to smack him, and he was in college.
They're all screwed up, all of them.
Okay. Well, all right. So he's doing a great job making us look fantastic. They must be having a hell of a time over there laughing at Donald Trump, but,
anyway,
once in a lifetime experience.
So then the real story. The real story is Michael Cohen. That's the big story. It's going to just overshadow everything. And Trump has to be annoyed that Michael Cohen's testimony is going to wind up overshadowing his fake Hanoi summit.
Yeah, whatever happened to politics stopping at the water's edge?
That stopped in 2016, along with all the other norms that Trump has stepped on.
Oh, wells.
So Ryan Goodman is summarizing what we know from Michael Cohen's opening statement.
Okay.
And here's some of the most legally significant revelations from Michael Cohen. Who's Ryan Goodman?
Cool, very legal.
He's former special counsel to the Department of Defense, co-editor-in-chief of Just Security, chaired professor NYU Law, former chaired professor Harvard Law. I'm thinking that he would know what putz ipsa loquitur means without having to look it up on Wikipedia. I'm just thinking.
Right. Well, probably true.
Anyway, here's some of the most legally significant revelations in Michael Cohen's opening statement for Trump-Russia investigation.
We'll see.
Number 6 and number 10.
Yeah. Okay.
What are they? I'll tell you. Let's start with number 1.
Oh.
Cohen says Trump indirectly, implicitly told or encouraged Cohen to lie to Congress about the Russia deal.
Oh, yes. Right.
Lesson 1. A lot more truth and validation to the BuzzFeed report. Every time BuzzFeed comes out with something, whether it was the dossier that they originally published,
yeah,
or the story that Trump directed Cohen to lie to Congress,
right.
Every time they come up with that story, the rest of the media dumps on them and says, we can't do this, that's irresponsible. Turns out that they were right.
Yeah, a little National Enquiry there, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. So lesson 1, a lot more truth validation of that BuzzFeed report. Lesson 2, even encouraging and not just directing Cohen to lie would be illegal.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
Because Cohen says, Mr. Trump made it clear to me. And that's the way they do it. Right? You know, let's say for the sake of argument, we'll get to this, I think, in the details. Let's say for the sake of argument, Trump is working on trying to make a deal for Trump Tower while he's running for president.
All right.
And Michael Cohen's going to go testify to Congress.
Yes. Okay. Understood. Yes.
And then Trump sees Cohen right before he testifies. And maybe the Trump Tower stuff is while he was running but not winning. In other words, maybe it was pre-inaugural, maybe it was post-inaugural, but it's way, way months after Trump admitted to dealing with it.
Yeah.
So he was still doing stuff he wasn't supposed to be doing as the nominee, if not the candidate himself. This is a thing. And Michael Cohen is going to go to Congress to testify about it. And Trump doesn't say to Michael Cohen, I want you to lie to Congress. He says to Michael Cohen, I was not looking him straight in the eye. I was not working on the Trump Tower at that time.
Right. I was never here.
You got that?
Right.
I had nothing to do with the Trump Tower.
Wink.
That's all he has to say. He doesn't have to say, and I want you to lie to Congress about it. That part is unnecessary.
Right.
It was pretty clear,
even if he says it in
to Michael Cohen what Trump wanted him to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even encouraging but not directing Cohen to lie would be illegal, says Ryan Goodman, who's actually a lawyer, unlike myself. Okay. Number 2.
Okay.
Top former prosecutors, experts in this article, analyze the criminal law if Trump encouraged Cohen to lie to
Congress. Yes.
Congress.
You should really lie. I encourage you. Go ahead. You'll be really good at it. There you go, like that.
And it's an article from Just Security. Why it may not matter if BuzzFeed got it wrong. Encouraging is bad enough. Okay, encouraging perjury is bad. Okay, number 3. Cohen says Trump knew in advance from Roger Stone
of
WikiLeaks release of the DNC emails.
Okay.
2 significant implications, if it's true. First, it's likely Trump committed perjury.
He did.
Because CNN says that Trump told special counsel Robert Mueller in writing that Roger Stone did not tell him about WikiLeaks.
Yeah, so I told you what to do with Trump writings, though.
Which is?
Don't believe him.
Don't believe him. Okay, so here's the CNN report containing the important details of Trump's written reply to Mueller. Stone's denial matches with what Trump told Mueller that the two never spoke about WikiLeaks. Now, one side point, did Trump's team purposefully leak the information to CNN about what Trump wrote in writing to communicate with other witnesses like Roger Stone to get the story straight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it didn't work very well, but yeah, okay.
Well, they pulled the same story and they're both lies. Okay. But here's one of his big points, number 6. Remember, it's number 6 and number 10. This is number 6.
Okay.
A much, much, much bigger implication of Stone's communicating with Trump about WikiLeaks. It directly implicates Trump in Stone's illegally coordinating with WikiLeaks. Former White House counsel Bob Bauer and I spelled out those legal issues. Yes, collusion, the legal significance of the new Mueller revelations. So we had written that a little while ago and was looking for this.
Okay.
Now, as others have pointed out, with that Roger Stone comment and with other comments about Don Jr., etc., Mueller's going to need more corroboration than just Michael Cohen said so.
Says who?
Exactly. Says who? Says Michael Cohen. Says me.
That's it.
Number 7, Cohen provides some limited evidence that Trump knew in advance from Don Jr. about Trump Tower meeting. The meeting is all set. Don Jr. whispered to Trump while Michael Cohen was in the room. I remember Mr. Trump saying, okay, good, let me know. What struck me as I look back and thought about that exchange between Don Jr. and his father, I'm reading from his opening statement today, was that Mr. Trump had frequently told me and others that his son Don Jr. had the worst judgment of anybody in the world. Well, that part's true. That rings true.
And I believe it. I mean, I believe he said that. I believe he believes it.
Yeah, and also that Don Jr. would never set up any meeting of any significance alone, certainly not without checking with his father. I also knew that nothing went on in Trump world, especially the campaign, without Mr. Trump's knowledge and approval. So I concluded Don Jr. was referring to that June 2016 Trump Tower meeting about dirt on Hillary Clinton. So Cohen's evidence of what Don Jr. specifically told Trump about any Trump Tower meeting is weak. That said, Cohen's qualifications and limited information actually adds to Cohen's credibility. If he were lying about this, he presumably exaggerated.
I see.
Cohen says he had no direct evidence that Trump campaign colluded with Russia. He adds, but I have my suspicions, but Congress will want to know what indirect evidence Cohen might have. Okay. I didn't have direct evidence that Mr. Trump or his campaign colluded with Russia. I do not. I want to be clear, but I have my suspicions. On the other hand, I saw another report elsewhere that claims that Michael Cohen's cell phone was in Prague at the same time that Michael Cohen was supposed to be in Prague.
That's true. That, too, only direct evidence that the phone was there. It is indirect evidence that he himself may have been there.
And the last point is that Mueller's memo says Cohen's information is consistent with other evidence.
Okay.
So that means Mueller has more than just him.
Okay. Well, that's right. It has to be something else in order for it to be consistent. That's number 10 on the list, the other bombshell. Okay, we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. And send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. You know how that line goes. Greg Dworkin's still with us. Let's see. So we've summed up the big bombshell points that are expected. It's only about half an hour until the bombshells, as actually revealed in real time, begin falling from Michael Cohen. We'll see whether they fall with any greater drama. Well, that's just his opening statement.
I mean, they get to ask him questions, right? That's part of the deal of being in Congress.
Yes, like they can say, hey, what about your wife? Oh. Or whatever they're planning on asking. By the way, my prediction is
that's not the
Gates
assumption.
does
The assumption is that, as I saw somebody suggest on Twitter, half of the Republican members are going to be bringing in Michael Cohen girlfriends to sit next to them during the hearing.
And that's just because they like the girls.
Yeah, it's going to be a Five Angels piece, like from The Godfather.
I have a feeling, though, that Michael Cohen might not care very deeply about those women.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Thing is, of course, one has to remember, because it's easy to forget with all of this.
I'll try.
That Matt Gaetz is not on that committee. He's on Judiciary.
Oh, well. So
this is oversight.
He may run in there and try and do it anyway. Hey, what about your wife?
I wanted an argument. This is abuse. Argument is over there. So it's not Judiciary. It's oversight. The person on oversight is Jim Jordan. Good friends, of course, with Matt Gaetz. So I assume anything Gaetz says, Jordan's going to try to pull.
That is probably true. In fact, maybe later on I'll discuss it, but I have a Washington Post piece here about the turf wars going on between members of the various committees who want to pose stupid questions to people and are being perhaps shut out from doing that. I'm not certain. You can, by the way, you can actually arrange to join a committee to ask questions. If it's a super high profile thing where all the existing members want all the time they can get. But I don't think Gates knows how to get that done, nor would anybody give him that courtessy. But
are you allowed to have your staff ask questions? Because some of the members aren't very smart. I'm just asking.
Not usually in hearings, although sometimes in depositions the staff does the depositions all the time. And in certain situations, we saw it in Watergate hearings where they would have their counsel ask the questions. But ordinarily, no. That's not done. And members they don't care if they look stupid. They want to be the ones on camera for things like this. If you're not conducting the questioning in the main, if you're just doing the 5-minute lightning round, members do the questioning.
Right. And, of course, there's other things you're not allowed to do in committees. Like if you were in Judiciary Committee, for example.
You can do whatever you want.
Thank you for showing up today as a witness. But before we start, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask my good friend from Florida, did you ever settle that DUI charge, or was it dismissed? How did that work out? I forget.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't have to answer. So you could ask that question.
Do you get into trouble of asking questions like that?
Usually, yes. Impugning the other members in any way will usually get you yelled at, even if you're yelling at them about it. Well, that thing you just said is not true. I mean, you can usually get away with that one, but if it's anything else, I don't think so. Ordinarily, you can find yourself gagged for the rest of the day if you are spending your time impugning the motives of another member, even though there's a couple hundred of them who are spies and other evil doers. But okay.
So, will Cohen's testimony matter? Jonathan Bernstein, a political scientist, says, quick point. I saw some people earlier today doing the Nothing Matters routine with regard to public opinion.
I like that.
First of all, to repeat, some things certainly have mattered a lot. Trump's been unpopular despite peace and prosperity. And then gives some other examples where it matters. And Seth Maskett, another political scientist, says, to be clear, whether this moves public opinion or not, Michael Cohen is handing Congress evidence of substantial law-breaking by the president, and for Congress to do nothing is to protect Trump. And, of course, that's not what you want to be doing.
Right. Well, we don't want that. But then, again, nothing might matter. So.
All right. So for the rest of my short segment here, I am going to talk about this really interesting article because it gets to the point of what we were just discussing. I'm not saying the good member from Florida was drinking too much. I'm just saying that perhaps it's of interest that there was a DWI arrest.
Several.
But I'm not saying anything else. I have no, interest whatsoever in discussing his drinking habits.
That he was drunk yesterday. Just indirect evidence that says he's drunk for most of his life prior to that date.
Right. But it's interesting because Trump himself often will say things but then not get held to it. Yes. And here's a really interesting rhetorical discussion from the Washington Post entitled, How Donald Trump Gets Away with Saying Things Other Candidates Can't. And it's well worth practicing because it's very good. The ancient Greek rhetorical device behind the frontrunner's impunity. It's by Jennifer Marsica, Associate Professor of Communications at the Texas A&M.
Oh, this was from during the campaign.
And this was back from March of 2016.
I see.
And I think it's great. In an interview last month, George Stephanopoulos asked Donald Trump about his retweet of a follower who insisted that both Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz were ineligible for the presidency.
Yes.
Trump dismissed Stephanopoulos' question with, it was a retweet, as if to say that retweeting someone else's claim meant he wasn't responsible for the content.
Yes, he does believe that.
Right? When pressed, Trump continued, I mean, let people make their own determination. I never looked into it.
I'm just saying it's out there.
Right? What was the old LBJ line? I'm not saying my opponent screwed a chicken. Or whatever it is he said.
Right.
Let him go deny it.
Right. Yeah,
right?
Look at that.
It's a response that can be reduced to, I'm not saying it, I'm just saying it. People are saying,
Right. Many people are saying this. Exactly.
That's the device he used. As a scholar of American political rhetoric, I've previously written about the ways that Trump's rhetorical style mirrors that of other polarizing figures like George Wallace and Joseph McCarthy. But it's becoming increasingly clear, even back in 2016, that what sets Trump's campaign apart is reliance on paralipsis, a device that enables him to publicly say things he can later disavow without ever having to take responsibility for his words. Because Trump is a genius. The secret superpower is not taking responsibility.
Yes.
Right? The art of rhetoric, or persuasive communication, that's what rhetoric means. When you say to somebody dismissively, oh, that's just rhetoric, actually rhetoric is incredibly important. If it works, it's persuasive.
Right.
And it can include any number of forms: speeches, essays, tweets, images, films, and more. Paralipsis, para means side, and lapine means to leave, is a Greek term that translates leave it to the side. It's thought to be an ironic way for a speaker to say two things at once. So Trump's a Brooklyn hipster, right? Because he's ironic.
Yeah, that could be.
Who knew, right? But he's from Queens, so that's pretty ironic. For example, see, there's an example right there. For example, I didn't say anything bad about Queens. For example, say you wanted to imply that your coworker takes too many coffee breaks without actually accusing him wasting any time at work. You might say something like, I'm not saying he drinks more coffee than anybody else, but every time I go to the break room, he's there.
Right.
Right? I'm not saying that Matt Gaetz drinks too much, but every time I stop in a bar, he's there.
Right. Well, he's not.
And he's been there for a while. He's clearly been there for a while longer than I have.
Right.
And he's there before I get there, and he's there after I leave. I'm not saying he drinks too much. You might also shrug and make a something seems kind of off facial expression. Paralipsis is powerful because it can also allow somebody to make a false accusation or spread a false rumor while skirting the consequences. I heard a rumor that you did X. I'm not saying you did it. I'm just telling you I heard the rumor.
Oh, many people are saying
now you
Trump
go deny
is a
it.
Child rapist, right?
Exactly. And Trump has become a master at wielding this tool. It's one of these things where once you realize that's what he's doing, you go, okay.
Yeah, I mean, although,
in other words, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. That's all.
Yeah, right. I don't know how masterful he is. He's got it, and no one will arrest him. Is that all it takes to be a master? I guess.
Well, it's enough for his defenders to say he didn't really say that, so that works there.
Well, that's just lying. That's not.
In January, Trump retweeted a photoshopped image of Jeb Bush from a user with the handle White Genocide TM. In response to the backlash he received for retweeting a white supremacist, Trump simply shrugged. I don't know about retweeting. You retweet somebody, they turn out to be white supremacists. I know nothing about these people.
turned out to be white supremacists.
With the name White Genocide TM. Who knew? Who could have known? No one could have known. That's like Condi Rice defending him.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody could have known about that PDB.
It's really more of a historical handle.
Likewise, he blamed a faulty – yeah, the guy's a history buff. That's all I took from that. I didn't know anything about it. Likewise, he blamed a faulty earpiece for his unwillingness to disavow David Duke in the KKK. I don't even know about what you're talking about. So I don't know. Did he endorse me? What's going on? Because I know nothing about it. I know nothing about white supremacists. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Okay? And so it's just fascinating. There's a lot of people that do it. It's very common in politics. Trump does it a lot. To use the candidate's brand of paralipsis, I'm not saying that Trump's a hypocrite and a demagogue. I'm just saying he doesn't exactly follow his own advice.
That's right. I noticed that are you going to continue with this one? Or
that's pretty much it.
I just saw that the next paragraph is sort of relevant again. It just happens to be the case. And it's a short one.
Okay, you do it.
When Gawker tricked Trump into retweeting a quote from Benito Mussolini, which John Cornyn just did like yesterday. His response was, what difference does it make whether it's Mussolini or somebody else? It's certainly a very interesting quote. Okay, I mean, that's,
right, exactly.
That's all it takes, I guess. And I guess John Cornyn could do the same.
What difference does it make whether Hitler said it or not? There's good people on both sides.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's an interesting quote. What can I tell you? I don't agree with it. I'm just saying it got said, and so many people are saying it now. All right. Well, yeah, sure. I haven't even seen John Cornyn offer that. Maybe that's even beneath him. I have no idea. All right. Well, I just wanted to bring that one up because it's Mussolini and we just had that happen. That's the extent of the relevance of that particular paragraph. If you're done, I'm done.
Right. Anyway, so I'm looking on Twitter. I'm seeing the reporters are starting to get more and more outraged. Maggie Haberman. To be clear, the reporters are being excluded by an official from the U.S. government, not foreign officials, in one of the more outrageous moves by this White House. And it's a very big deal, says Soledad O'Brien.
Absolutely.
And I think that really that's the story out of the summit this morning, not whatever propaganda Trump wants to get out of that. So in 15 minutes, we get to watch The Price is Right with Michael Cohen hosting. We
Excellent.
get
I bet $35,000.
Yeah, exactly. That's my best guess. $35,000, but in a series.
Yeah, so it's going to happen several times over. All right. Very good. Are you going to watch? Are you going to? I don't think you should go to work.
I got to go to work.
All right.
But I'll have it on in the background, and
Okay,
I'm
good.
sure that YouTube will have the highlights. And we'll talk a little bit about it. I have a feeling we'll have something to talk about tomorrow. I just have that feeling.
So. I think you're probably right. And, well, we'll wait and see what those things are. And I did want to just drop for you before you go. Did you see David Farenthold apparently has somewhere along the line, I don't know whether it had to do with the Cohen testimony or what, but just has tracked down a third portrait of Donald Trump that he has used the Donald Trump Foundation to buy for himself. I'm not even certain why that came up again, but this one apparently...
Well, I think Michael Cohen, among other things, is going to be talking about the fact that...
That's right.
That Donald Trump actually paid somebody to bid in auction for Trump's picture.
That's it, yeah.
Then paid that fellow back from the Trump charity.
Yeah.
And then hung one of those pictures in one of his resort places.
9-foot oil painting. This is a big piece here. So yeah, he paid somebody to bid $60,000 for the painting.
So everybody in public would see how valuable a picture of himself is.
Right, and according to the testimony, this was happening at a big art auction event, and his portrait was going up last, and he wanted very badly to be the highest priced subject of a portrait that was auctioned that day, because that would show how important and awesome and popular he is. So he just paid somebody else to bid $60,000 for it. But he didn't pay, of course. He used the charity money that he had stolen from other people to pay it. Okay.
Right. Greg Sargent pulled out the piece
Thank
that
you.
directly goes to the BuzzFeed Tell Him to Lie piece.
Oh, good.
Here's the quote. This is BuzzFeed. Even as Trump and Cohen are discussing the Moscow project, Trump allegedly looks him in the eye and tells him this isn't happening. If so, this was plainly intended as a command from boss to subordinate to lie about it. And the big argument is that BuzzFeed, you don't have any proof that he directly told him to lie about it. But if you read the paragraph, that's what he just did. And so that's going to be the discussion today. I'm sure somebody in Congress will ask about that.
Yeah. All right. Have you got that one? Maybe you could drop that in a list here for me. Is it Greg Sargent, you say?
Yeah, I got it right here, so I will do that.
Hey,
so with that, I'll
right
take my
here.
leave for today, though.
Okay, excellent.
So lots to talk about, but really those are the main ones. I threw in the pundit roundup because there's a bunch of other stories there. You can talk about candidate politics. I have to say, I want to get it in because I'm afraid I'm going to forget to say it. Bernie Sanders news. If you step back and just look at the rollouts, Kamala Harris had a great one. She got a bump in the polls. She raised money. Bernie has had the best rollout so far. If you're basing it on the amount of money raised,
What else?
he's got 10 million. And poll bumps. He got about a 6-point bump in the morning consult poll of what do Democrats want in terms of a candidate.
Well,
of course, Joe
another thing
Biden hasn't gotten off the fence yet. We don't know what he's doing. But, I just want to acknowledge that is in fact the case. Unfortunately, just as I was writing that for the pundit roundup, Bernie and his previous candidate team from 2016 parted ways in what looks like a not amicable way. So that kind of stepped on the rollout a little bit.
Oh.
If you're just analyzing how rollouts go.
Okay. Well, I don't see what else there is to analyze, but I guess how do you argue? So he got a big polling bump and pulled in a lot of money. I think that's pretty solid analysis.
Right. And once that happened, he hired a new campaign director, and his old campaign walked out.
That's good, actually. I mean, that was a big complaint.
We're talking Tad
for a
Devine
lot
and
of-
other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that may be a plus in the end. I mean, I'm not sure. But anyway, that's that. But, all of that stuff is going to take a backseat to the Michael Cohen story.
Okay. I don't mind.
I don't mind either. All right, take care.
Let's do it.
And
Okay,
I'll talk
thanks,
to you tomorrow.
Greg. All right, excellent. Thank you for the great start.
And if you have to guess on the price of something, guess $35,000. Just start there.
Yes, 60 if you're bidding on a painting.
Right, exactly right. Take care. Bye.
Okay, thanks. You do the same. And lots happening here. Lots of people combing through the prepared testimony, which is usually, not terribly different from the opening statement anyway, as how it's offered. People just simply tend to go in there and read those things, and you'd have to think that Michael Cohen was great at ad-libbing to think it was going to be hugely different. But a lot of good points being taken from this, and in particular, I do see a lot of people pointing out, that was a real problem for BuzzFeed for a while, that the more established papers, and most notably the Washington Post, for some reason, really went after BuzzFeed on the basis of a not a flat out denial of the story as reported, but for some reason they decided. The special counsel's office really didn't issue that flat of a denial. It was a crafted. It was a denial of sorts, but it was a very crafted one. And if it was read carefully, or maybe it's only after the fact, and now that we have information that points to the fact that there will be corroborating evidence at some other point, people are reaching this conclusion. But basically, the Washington Post really jumped the gun and read too much into the special counsel office's statement about the story and about how Cohen came to understand from Trump that he should lie to Congress. And they really overcompensated and really overdid it, and left a lot of people with the impression that the story was wrong, that BuzzFeed had been wrong, that BuzzFeed was overreaching, and that in fact the special counsel's office believed that Michael Cohen was not directed to lie. And it looks like that's going to fall apart today, if it hasn't already. And the Washington Post and other papers that participated in that should be should feel some significant shame in having done that. I think that's fair to say. And as Greg had pointed out, just like the dossier, again, everybody was pearl clutching and gasping, and how could you get so far out in front of things? And this is, they didn't go so far as to say it, but they certainly seemed to hint that BuzzFeed, again, like after the dossier, was suffering from some sort of Trump derangement syndrome, and us crazy leftists out there who were drawing perfectly legitimate conclusions from evidence that was being offered up in public were absolutely nuts. And what incentive did the Washington Post have to do it? I mean, I know that's the New York Times' favorite game for some reason, though I'm not certain exactly why. It's just sort of this nebulous idea that they need to be even-keeled and middle of the roadish about these things, even as their reporters spend the whole day complaining about how abnormal Trump is. Then the product comes out every day, and all the printed product says is that everything's normal. So I don't really know why they do that, except that that seems to be their business model. And the big reward for the Washington Post, of course, is that their owner is targeted personally by Trump himself, by the Russian government, apparently by the Saud family masquerading as a government. Everybody has it in for Jeff Bezos, so no favors gained at all by being overly cautious with respect to the dossier or the Cohen testimony. So, I don't know. I'm not certain what to tell you about that. I think that's an important point, and it won't change things in the way we do the show here. We're still, unfortunately, reliant on in many ways, the Washington Post and the New York Times. The reporters still continue to turn out good product. I just don't know where the editorial staff's heads are and what they think they're going to get out of these things. All right. Let's see. What have we here? You've sent on a couple other articles here, Greg. Let's see. What's this one here? Some tweets of interest. BuzzFeed News issues statement on Michael Cohen testimony. Okay, this comes from Aidan McLaughlin, the editor of Mediaite. So let's take a look. Michael Cohen's public testimony reaffirms what he claimed in private to investigators, as we reported last month. President Trump directed him to lie to Congress about negotiations to build the Trump Tower in Moscow in the heat of the 2016 campaign. I guess that'll be testified to again today, and Republicans will say, yeah, but he's got a girlfriend, and I don't know, somehow this will come out as a both sides issue by the end of the day, and we'll see whether that's done effectively or not. What else? George Conway, really, on Twitter, how to spot a sociopath. Is this related? I mean, obviously, you're talking about Trump and Trumpsters here, but is that just some background reading for today's testimony? This George Conway, of course, Kellyanne Conway's husband. I don't think we'll go through his piece here, but just in case you're interested in it, Psychology Today piece on how to spot a sociopath. 16 key behavioral characteristics that define sociopaths/psychopaths and others with antisocial disorders, which I really thought would be something that they would have taught in class for those reading Psychology Today. But in case you were absent that day, this piece will help you with it. Oh, and it's an old piece at that, by the way. It couldn't even necessarily have been targeted at Donald Trump. Well, it could have been, but it would have been awfully prescient to have published it in May of 2013, though I guess they brought it back for that reason. It says here, last reviewed on June 9th, 2016, so clearly somebody was reminded of it in the context of Donald Trump. Well, let's see. There are several, of course. Oh, look, they're short and they're bullet pointed and the whole thing. I mean, would you like to know it? We can actually fit this thing in. Maybe it'll help you spot a sociopath. Psychologists vie to enumerate the facets of sociopathy. Joseph Newman argues that the sociopath has an attention bottleneck that allows him to focus only on one activity or train of thought to the exclusion of others. That sounds familiar. Researchers, including Howard Kamler, say that the sociopath lacks not moral identity, but self-identity altogether. Yet nowhere do I recognize myself more than in Hervé Klecky's clinical profiles. Is the writer saying I'm a sociopath? Not me. Him, her. M.E. Thomas is the writer. In The Mask of Sanity, published in 1941. That sounds like a good idea. Cleckley, sorry, I got that name wrong, distilled what he believed to be the 16 key behavioral characteristics that define psychopathy, but sociopathy as well. I'm sure most of these factors still used today to diagnose sociopaths/psychopaths and others with antisocial disorders. Psychopathy. Do I have that right? Psychopath. It's not psychopathy, obviously. Psychopathy and sociopathy are terms with an intertwined clinical history, and they are now largely used interchangeably, in case you were wondering. The DSM excludes both in favor of antisocial personality disorder. Even so, the 16 characteristics are conveniently bullet-pointed and pretty short, so I can run through them. Superficial charm and good intelligence. Well, okay. Right out of the box, we have problems. He doesn't have a good intelligence brain. Superficial charm, in a way. People are listening, and he gets attention. And some people who know him personally say, oh yeah, he is personally very charming. He's not like elegant charming. It's just different somehow. Anyway, absence of delusions and other signs of irrational thinking. Are we sure we're reading the right article here? Absence of nervousness or neurotic manifestations. Absence? Really? Unreliability, that I get. Untruthfulness and insincerity, yes, of course. Lack of remorse and shame, absolutely. So we're getting better here. But really, those first ones right out of the block, unless I misunderstand how they mean these things, they don't seem to match. Inadequately motivated antisocial behavior, I think. Okay. Poor judgment and failure to learn by experience, sure. Pathologic egocentricity, for sure. And incapacity for love, almost certainly. General poverty in major affective reactions. Okay. Throwing paper towels. I like people who don't get shot down, I guess. I don't know. Specific loss of insight. I don't even know exactly what that means. He has no insight, certainly. Specific loss of insight. Unresponsiveness in general interpersonal relations. Have a good time, everybody, in the hurricane. Fantastic and uninviting behavior with alcohol and sometimes without. I don't even know what that means. This one's unfortunate. Suicide threats rarely carried out. It would help if he would maybe follow through, but I don't think he's ever made a suicide threat. That's not his style. Sex life impersonal, trivial, and poorly integrated. That seems, I think that means he's doing it. And failure to follow any life plan. So they get stronger towards the end, I guess. I don't know. You make your own judgment about whether or not he meets the clinical definition according to this particular article. And, hey, but do it on your own time, I guess, because it's time for us to move on to another break, a short one here. Yes, finally, another tweet about the arrangement of a fake bidder to buy the portrait of him. I wonder if they'll have a picture of this portrait. I'd love to see which one it is. All of this happening in the Hamptons. Very important that those rich people think that he's really super cool and popular. So I guess that's why he did it. More news after this. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, okay, that last tweet that Greg sent us is the tweet of John Swain, senior reporter for The Guardian U.S., who found, because you can always find, a tweet about everything from Donald Trump. He has dug up the dotard's tweet from July of 2013, I guess, relating to this portrait that he faked up the auction of. And it's pretty clear that, this was a setup from the beginning. Just found out that a charity auction of celebrity portraits in East Hampton, at a charity auction in East Hampton, my portrait by artist William Quigley topped the list at $60,000 or $60K, as he put it. And a very exciting 300 retweets on that original bit. And so now, of course, that's getting some attention. Always a tweet, as we know. John Swain, of course, now retweeting that along with the annotation. Trump arranged for a fake bidder to buy this and then paid from it from his charitable foundation, which wasn't charitable, according to Michael Cohen's prepared remarks. And so there you have it. Looking mighty dumb with that one. And, of course, another instance of fake news in the sense that it's news about a fake. And that's really basically it for that particular story. All right. And let's see. Moving on. And I guess it's now 10 o'clock. And they're getting ready. I don't know whether they're starting on time there or not, but it sounds like there's... the things are getting underway. I just saw here, that looks like fun, the Rude Pundit noting, I just realized that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is going to get to question Cohen, and it feels like opening an awesome Christmas present. Is that right? Is she on that committee? We can talk a little bit about, I mentioned that there are some turf wars going on, and perhaps as we wait to see if we're going to hear from Joan today in our 10 o'clock hour, we might discuss some of that. Just a sidetrack in all of the stories going on, a little bit more of a process angle on it. And of course, I have only the AMP version of the damn thing. So let's see if I can quickly call up the actual version from the Washington Post, and that way we won't have any difficulty when we're trying to read through this. House Democrats seek to quell turf war on eve of explosive Cohen hearing. That explosive Cohen hearing would be the one going on now, the eve of it being yesterday. Rachel Bade and Karen Demirjian. I don't know, it's Karen, Karoun. I don't know whether she just says Karen or whether she bothers to try to pronounce out the Karun Demirjian. Anyway, sorry, Karun or Karun. And you too, Rachel. I haven't spent enough time talking about you instead. Okay, here's the story. This is what they want to be known for. House Democrats are quietly working to keep a simmering turf war from erupting during their first blockbuster hearing with President Trump's one-time top associate, an early test of whether they can pursue complex and crisscrossing probes of the administration without turning on each other. They're really looking for a story here. Make it juicy. As the House Oversight and Intelligence Committees prepare to interview Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, this week, several Oversight Committee members are balking at terms the panel chairman agreed to. That would be Elijah Cummings, right? Dictating that all Russia matters will be addressed by the Intelligence Committee alone. I don't see how they're really going to be able to delineate this, but that's the intention. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. I just don't think I agree necessarily. Anyway, this disagreement flared up during the late night strategy session on Monday when some senior Oversight Committee lawmakers said they wanted to ask Cohen about the Trump Organization connections with Russian oligarchs and Russia finances. I would want to know that too. The Intelligence Committee is scheduled to question Cohen behind closed doors on Thursday, so we won't hear about that until after the fact. Some leaks will come out. A day after his high-profile public testimony before the Oversight Committee on Wednesday. The dispute highlights the challenges eager House Democrats face as they delve deep into investigations of the president, the first since the party captured control of the House last November. Several committees have jurisdiction over controversies that have plagued the administration, and each one wants a turn in the spotlight. Except, I guess, for the Intelligence Committee, which wants to do it behind closed doors. But they want the spotlight to be on the fact that they're doing it. But Democratic leaders have sought to avoid such overlap and streamline their efforts because of fears that multiple committees investigating the same issues will make the party seem overzealous and too political. There are also logistical concerns that overlapping document requests and invitations for repetitive testimony could slow the process. That's true, but I guess behind the scenes in all of this, you should remember that there will already be overlapping questions, things that make people seem overzealous and too political, and will slow the process with repetitive testimony within each individual committee. Anybody who's ever sat through an entire televised hearing and questioning period will know that a consistent feature of almost any such hearing is the repetitive nature of the questioning and testimony offered, because very often multiple members want to be on camera asking a particular question of a particular witness. And it's a rare thing when the questioning is effectively organized ahead of time so that that doesn't happen, and so that all of the stories that they need to elicit from a witness are drawn out one at a time by a coordinated set of questions as opposed to a bunch of members out for themselves. Sometimes in super high-profile hearings, they are able to spend some time. They find the time to coordinate these things, but it's not always the case. Anyway, we shouldn't be tripping over each other, said Representative Jackie Speer of California, Democrat of California, a member of both committees, so she doesn't have any problem. She'll get to ask everything she wants. In the case of Cohen, there is another complicating factor: desire among Democrats not to impede what remains of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe into whether the Trump campaign colluded with Russia in the 2016 election. Intelligence Committee members argue That's the main reason Russia matters should be addressed only in the confines of their closed-door session. I disagree. I think there's an awful lot to stories connected to Russia that doesn't necessarily implicate issues under the jurisdiction of the Intelligence Committee. Very often, I mean, you should never lose sight of the fact that whatever interactions there are with Russians do get fed into the Russian intelligence apparatus. But you should also note that a lot of the operations undertaken by Trump, the Trump Organization, and others connected with him that take place in conjunction with Russians aren't conceived of by the Trump players as necessarily as intelligence operations, and might not even be thought of primarily by the Russians as intelligence operations, but to the extent that they can glean intelligence from it, they will. And the fact that the intelligence services should become interested in financial dealings with Donald Trump shouldn't confine discussion of it to the Intelligence Committee, particularly as they'll be doing their questioning behind closed doors. That's my opinion. Now, how the Oversight and Intelligence Committees handle the potential jurisdictional clash this week may be, or it may not be at all, the first test, and there may never have to be a test, of how well House Democrats can cooperate in the spotlight, but it won't be the last. Well, unless it is, because it never was the first, if you catch my drift. Several committees have expressed interest in investigating the same topics falling under their overlapping jurisdictions, and I don't see why other sets of eyes don't help in this. Speer, for instance, noted that the House Judiciary Committee has been seeking answers from Trump officials on the administration's controversial family separation policy at the U.S.-Mexico border. But on Tuesday, Oversight Committee Democrats subpoenaed documents related to the same policy. Well, of course, I mean, the Oversight Committee is going to have a lot of overlap because what is the portfolio of oversight? It's not limited to anything in particular, right? So naturally, they're going to want a little piece of everything. And having one committee with a sort of generalized jurisdiction like that is probably a pretty good idea. You can have people take a look at pieces from all over the puzzle as opposed to just jurisdictional pieces of a puzzle. Anyway, additionally, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Eliot Engel, Democrat of New York, said he wanted to investigate Trump's one-on-one meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, potentially even calling Trump's interpreter to testify. Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff, California, of course, is also looking at that angle. And, of course, one would take place in public and one wouldn't, and maybe I would like to have a look at things. All right, Engel says, we're not going to step on each other's toes. We're talking every day. We're figuring out the best way. We're not getting in the way of each other. Believe me, there is plenty there for everybody. That's probably true. Cohen's testimony on Wednesday is expected to dominate Washington as the former Trump fixer and close business associate accuses the president of lies, racism, and cheating, according to a person familiar with the matter. The White House and GOP allies on the Hill have sought to discredit Cohen as a liar who can't be trusted. And he is a liar and probably can't be trusted, but okay. In a statement Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders called Cohen a disgraced felon and said that it's laughable that anyone would take a convicted liar like Cohen at his word. You spent 10 years doing it, but okay, let's all not laugh somehow at that. Trump has said publicly that he's not concerned about Cohen's testimony, but privately his advisors said they are preparing for him to delve into uncomfortable issues for Trump, including hush payments to women. White House officials are frustrated by the split-screen spectacle expected on Wednesday when Cohen's testimony is scheduled to begin just after Trump finishes dinner in Hanoi with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and just before the two leaders meet for a day of high-stakes nuclear arms negotiations, if that's actually what's going on. It's unfortunate this is happening now, said one White House official who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the Cohen hearing. Of course, the Cohen hearings have been planned for a little while, and, I mean, so has this meeting with Kim Jong-un, but considering how much of it was actually prepared at the last minute, they could easily have changed the timing. If they couldn't persuade Congress to change their timing, they could have made it happen at a different time themselves. They just opted not to because they're losers. Representative Elijah Cummings, Democrat of Maryland, chair of the Oversight Committee and the Intelligence Committee's Schiff, worked out an agreement in recent days on how to divide up Cohen's questioning. Under the terms, Oversight Committee members would stick to questions about the president's business interests, potential conflicts of interest, and hush payments during the 2016 campaign to women alleging affairs with the president. Intelligence Committee members will focus on Russia and potential financial leverage from other foreign actors that other foreign actors might hold over Trump and those close to him. But some Oversight Committee Democrats are arguing that the public has a right to hear why Cohen lied to Congress about plans to build a Trump Tower in Moscow during the 2016 election. And since the Oversight Committee's hearing is the only public forum for Cohen's testimony before he goes to prison, these members and aides believe it should be fair game. I think so. During the late-night House Oversight Committee meeting, senior panel members Jerry Connolly of Virginia and Stephen Lynch of Massachusetts expressed the same sentiment. They asked why the committee would agree to these terms with the Intelligence Committee, and they ticked off a list of Russia-related questions they want to explore in the hearing. Lynch, one of the Oversight Committee Democrats unhappy with the scope rules, said the agreement effectively means House Democrats will wall off a whole segment of Cohen's story that is of extremely and keen interest to, it's really grammatically incorrect, but okay, to the American people. When you have a friendly witness, and I don't know if I would necessarily call him that, but okay, when you have a friendly witness, you get them to tell their story. So by unofficially compartmentalizing the testimonial process, he can't do that. Well, if he reads his opening statement, he can. That's what Lynch said anyway. And he added, it just does not work well mechanically. Lynch said he will try to follow the rules, but argued that we're trying to bring some transparency to the process. But while we're doing that, we're also not having a full and open and honest discussion. Asked about the pushback over the scope of the hearing, Connolly played down the disagreement on Tuesday. We have broad jurisdiction over everything on the Oversight Committee, Connolly said, but that means we will also overlap in jurisdiction with somebody, always. I think that's largely the point we were making here earlier. And we always want to be respectful of that. We don't want to trample on other people's interest. So engagement is important here, and you do the best you can. That's the answer. Good job, Jerry. Connolly and Lynch are far from the only Oversight Committee members who want to explore the Trump Organization's connections with Russia. Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland said he and his colleagues will have to ask about Russia in some capacity because the corporate practices of the Trump Organization are of great interest to us, and there are all these emolument clause violations taking place because of entanglements with foreign governments. Asked about how that overlaps with what the Intelligence Committee was investigating, Raskin added, it's a delicate allocation of labor between the Intelligence Committee and the Oversight Committee. Intelligence certainly is going to be the one focused on the active measure intelligence operation conducted by the Russians against us, but it obviously blends into the domestic politics here. Another House Democrat was more blunt, but spoke on the condition of anonymity, to speak frankly. Who is it that makes up these rules? I do not believe that members of the Oversight Committee are going to be bound by the rules of another committee. That's not exactly what's happening here, but okay. But Schiff and other Democrats have stressed that the limits are in place for a reason and point out that even if members want to pepper Cohen with Russia questions, he may not answer them in the open forum because of the ongoing investigation. We've had to juggle a number of equities and do our best to accommodate the interests and concerns of the special counsel's office and the Southern District of New York, Schiff said in an interview. My understanding is that whether questions are posed or not posed go beyond what the chairman, Cummings, has said, that the witness will only be responding to things within the scoping document. There are also pragmatic reasons that party leaders want Schiff at the helm of all things Russia. They've cited the importance of exploiting each committee's investigative strengths, and Schiff's committee has the staff and the clearance to view and investigate more sensitive intelligence matters, including counterintelligence and money laundering, that some other panels lack the expertise to fully explore. Additionally, the intelligence committees in the House and Senate, the committees to which Cohen pleaded guilty to lying, had long had an interest in bringing him back to clear up the record, particularly concerning the timeline of the Trump Tower project the president sought to build in Moscow. Since Cohen advisor Lanny Davis has had a close relationship with Cummings, the parties agreed to schedule his appearance just after Democrats took the House. But when Cummings announced the hearings in January, it caught other panels by surprise, according to several people on Capitol Hill who had expected he would appear before the intelligence panel. Schiff immediately said he would schedule to Cohen for closed-door testimony alongside his Oversight Committee appearance so he could address the lies he confessed to telling the panel in 2017, as well as other topics too sensitive for a public hearing. When Cohen canceled his Oversight Committee testimony citing fears about his safety, several members of that committee were upset about the fact that Schiff had seemingly secured closed-door testimony, worried that they would miss their chance to question him. Eventually, Cohen rescheduled every appearance he had planned before congressional panels, including one with the Senate Intelligence Committee, to this week. Though the panels swiftly agreed to chalk up the experience to a coordination mistake, the episode has served as a reminder to Democrats of how they don't want to appear to be doing business. They don't want. Okay, since the beginning of the year, staffers from the approximately half-dozen panels involved in investigations of Trump are meeting almost weekly. The panel chairs have also joined forces to release several joint letters demanding responses from the administration, insisting that new Attorney General William Barr release the full special counsel's report, and pushing Secretary Treasury Steven Mnuchin to halt a planned rollback of sanctions affecting a Russian oligarch close to Putin. But when letters and investigations get to the point of public hearings with critical witnesses, committee staffers and chairs are limited in their power to enforce cooperative discipline and potential for tension, such as that surrounding the Cohen questions, remains. I don't want to speculate about what might or might not happen, Schiff said of Wednesday's Oversight Committee hearing. All I can tell you is that the two committees have reached an agreement on it, which we consider a good sign. Upshot of that, then, I would expect some jurisdictional line crossing, probably from both committees, though you'll only be able to see whether that happens with the Oversight Committee. And even then, it might not be entirely clear that jurisdictional lines have been crossed unless the chairman seeks to point that out. And I'm not certain who benefits from having that happen. But I guess if you insist on not saying anything and just let members go on as though there were no jurisdictional lines being crossed, then I guess they'll just feel free to keep going, and then the chairs of other panels will say, "Why didn't you do anything about that, Chairman Cummings?" So we'll see whether that ends up playing a prominent part in the proceedings today. I don't see how they can clearly delineate on a lot of those things, as I think I've explained. I think there's just too much in which Russians are involved to categorize all of it, and I think it would probably be incorrect to categorize all of it as intelligence activity, even if it did get digested there on the Russian side. I don't think you should let how the Russians view it dictate how we view it. I mean, that's another way of putting it. Anyway, moving on to other topics before heading out for our third break, after which we'll welcome Joan to the air. Just to set things up a little bit for that discussion, I note for the record that today's work in the House, thanks to the Daily Leader, which has come in my mailbox here. H.R. 8, another low-numbered bill, which indicates a high priority for the majority leadership. Those early numbers, H.R. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, sometimes up to the first 50 or even 100 bill numbers are reserved in advance by the Speaker. I know we've mentioned this years ago, I think, on the program, but in case anybody is either new or had forgotten about that, that is a prerogative of the Speaker to reserve bill numbers, not just the first ones, but if you, for instance, are reintroducing legislation that you made a big deal of last time and you want to use the same bill number, you can petition for that right from the Speaker. And very often, just as a matter of course, though, H.R. 1 through, whatever, 25 are reserved for important leadership initiatives. And, H.R. 1 being your top initiative. And it's a symbolic thing. It's a little stupid, but there it is. In case you were ever wondering why it kept happening that way, that's the answer. This time, H.R. 8. Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. That will occupy the entirety of the legislative day on the floor. There are 4 amendments currently pending and cleared under the rule for it. Descriptions of them I don't have, though you can, if you're curious, if you're that interested and feel like doing the research on it, you can usually find descriptions of the amendments, the approved amendments anyway, and sometimes ones that have been rejected, at the Rules Committee website. They're usually submitted in writing ahead of time, and very often PDFs of proposed amendments are scanned in and are on display at the Rules Committee website in case you want to find out about the Lesko Amendment, the Dean Amendment, the Horn Amendment, and the Van Drew Amendment. The names of the sponsors, of course, tell you next to nothing about what those amendments are. But Bipartisan Background Checks Act, a gun sense legislation under consideration today, just to let you know where priorities lie. So very good. Good to see. And let's see, we'll move on to other topics in the next couple minutes. Let's see, I've got some more messages coming in via Twitter, and let's see, what are those? Let's see. Oh, okay, interesting. Also more about the Cohen testimony, although I think we've pretty well covered that one. And can move on to different subjects. Let's see, what else have we got in pocket that we can fit in very briefly before the break? What do we got here? Okay, well, more about Cohen. Oh, something from the Judiciary Committee. Yes, interesting piece here. A tweet from Robert McGuire, research director at Crew, asking yesterday, or mentioning that the House Judiciary Committee, another jurisdiction, right? The House Judiciary Committee believes it has evidence that Trump asked Whitaker, remember purported acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, Trump asked Whitaker whether Berman, a Trump appointee, could unrecuse and regain control of his office's investigation into Trump's former lawyer and his real estate business. That, according to a Wall Street Journal article. Good choice here for prior to the break, because Wall Street Journal articles are paywalled and we won't be able to read them in their entirety. But let's just take a look quickly at which one that is. That's a piece from February 25th, just 2 days ago. House investigators probe Trump contact with Matthew Whitaker. Interest centers on a U.S. Attorney's Office inquiry into Michael Cohen and Trump Organization. I think we heard about this one, unless this is another one that Trump approached Whitaker about trying to fix by putting in an investigator that would be more favorable to Trump. No, I think this is the one we were discussing earlier on. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Berman is the recused individual here, and the request put to Whitaker, and I think Whitaker originally testified, no, absolutely not. I was never asked by the White House to intervene in any investigation. Oh, except for the one that I actually just got caught on. So they're having him back to clarify, I guess. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption, though it's still aimed at saying thank you to all of you who are supporters of the show. We've made a lot of progress. When we first started this campaign, fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners were donating to help keep us on the air, and now that's down to about 1 in 15, but we've got a long way to go. Remember, it won't take much. Our average monthly donation is currently about $7, for which you're getting 2 hours of great news and entertainment 5 days a week. What's that, 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal. But as a wage, well, I think Democrats would be against that. But if we all put our 70 cents together, or even half of us, that'd really be something. And my kids could go to college. Now, that's not all on you, but remember, patreon.com, Patreon.com, is there to make it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X, or David Waldman, or Kagro in the Morning, or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right there where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your continuing support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us, and a busy day for Joan, and it's not even covering the Michael Cohen things. They're not supposed to be, but your eyes are wandering. You're telling me it's difficult to keep your eyes away from spectacle like that, and I'm trying to keep an eye on Twitter too. But all right, good morning, Joan. Tell us about what's up and what are they? What is a disciplined senior political writer concentrate on a day like today?
It's very hard for this senior political writer to be very disciplined when so much is going on in the House. But
right.
So much fun stuff. I mean, they're doing good stuff, but the Cohen hearing, yowza.
Right. How could you
Apparently, not know? Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan are embarrassing themselves. That much I've gathered from Twitter.
Yeah, that's what I saw just briefly. Somebody, I guess, have they not? What I gleaned from it was they have not gotten the message that they're not, chairing the committee and in charge anymore.
Yes. It's also curious to me, and maybe it's a reflection of just how disorganized the House Republican conference is right now. Mm. They're really letting Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows lead.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They never seem to quite get it with Jim Jordan, and I don't know how you could miss the problem, but I guess they're just ignoring it.
They're ignoring it.
Okay. I mean, and I always thought, what a great joke it is for the idea that Jim Jordan was somehow qualified to do oversight. It's like, that's been your major failing, sir. That's the problem. If you were conducting oversight when you were in charge of the wrestling program, then we wouldn't be here like this. But okay, whatever. Now he's an observant guy, it turns out.
Yeah, it matters now.
Right. Yeah, all that was happening before was young people in his charge being victimized. That's stupid. Yeah. Who cares about that? These is political points to be scored, sir. That's what really matters. So, okay.
Lordy. But on the grown-up side of the House,
yes,
on the responsible side of the House, we are, as you noted earlier, having debate today on 2 gun legislation packages.
Ah, okay.
One would close what they call the Charleston loophole.
Mm-hmm.
This was how Dylan Roof managed to get a gun to kill 9 people in the Emmanuel Church while having felony drug charges pending against him.
Oh.
Background check.
I see.
The gun seller had 3 days in which to conduct the background check, and at the end of those 3 days, if he doesn't get results, he can still sell the gun. That's how Dylan Roof got his. This would extend that as far as 20 days.
I see. Oh, okay.
Which is some states have longer waiting periods. for those background checks, but this would make it national.
All right.
So that's one important expansion of gun safety laws. The other would require background checks for online sales, private sales, gun show sales.
I see.
And,
Yes.
20-day background checks. This is the first massive, major expansion of gun safety legislation that we've seen in years, obviously.
Yeah.
And today, the House isn't going to be distracting from the Cohen show very much. Today, just talking about the rule and the amendments that will be allowed.
Okay.
On those pieces of legislation.
So final passage waits.
Yeah. I think that's probably a smart move.
Yeah.
Get the housekeeping taken care of for the votes tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're not expected to be
Headlines.
on Friday.
Okay.
Because,
Because it's Friday.
It's still
They're not crazy. Yeah, right. So, but that's...
Doesn't matter who's running things, Republicans or Democrats, they still would rather not have to be there on Friday if they don't have to be.
Right. And so, okay, that's good marshaling of resources. There's going to be Cohen headlines out of today. So tomorrow's papers will be all that, and they're going to let that happen. And then after the dust settles in the morning and those headlines are published, then the Friday headlines can be gun legislation passes the House for the first time since forever.
And Mitch McConnell will not bring it to the Senate floor.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's...
Because that's an important part of the headline.
This
is
true,
one
too.
of the reasons why Democrats are tackling these huge issues head on at the beginning. Well,
they're doing it because
gun
it's right.
sales isn't exactly a huge issue when it comes to gun safety legislation, but it's a start that is hugely supported by the American public.
Yeah.
Even gun owners say, well, yeah.
There should be.
Making sure background checks are done is a pretty smart thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's not the kind of maximalist legislation we might like to see on guns, but it's a smart move on guns.
Yeah. And hands McConnell a piece that has overwhelming support that he will somehow say, well, I don't care. It's not happening. We're just not going to take it up, which
Trump would veto it.
Yeah. Right.
There's
and we're
no point
afraid
in
of that.
bringing up anything Trump's going to veto.
Right. Because every time Trump vetoes something, they cut off one of my fingers. There's no, so what? So he vetoes things. Well, the political game is I don't want to make it look like we're standing in opposition to Trump, or we don't want to put Trump in the position of having to veto enormously popular legislation. But it used to be that the excuse was we have so many things to do that we can't waste our time on things that are not going to be able to pass because they're being vetoed. But there isn't anything going on in the Senate side, so that excuse is gone.
Well, there's some stuff going on the Senate side.
They do things, it's true, but legislatively it's been kind of quiet.
Legislatively very quiet because McConnell wants all of his time available for pushing through really bad judges.
Yes.
Like Eric Miller.
Okay.
I believe this is the Ninth Circuit.
Yes, I think so.
Trying to remember, was it circuit or a district court position in Washington State?
Miller himself? Oh, I don't know. I know that it was in the jurisdiction of the Ninth Circuit. That's a good question.
Yes.
I'll look it up for you while you tell us the story.
We know it's in the Ninth because both of the home state senators, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, objected to him. This is the first time a judge has been confirmed by the Senate when the two home state senators are not just not giving their blue slips, they are opposed.
Oh. Yes, okay, so affirmatively opposed. Yeah, and he is nominated to the Ninth Circuit.
Okay, there we go.
Court itself, yeah, okay.
Miller's been known as the judge you go to fight tribal rights.
Oh.
He's made a career as an attorney and in his entire practice of fighting against Native American rights. So
well, how nice.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, well, that's
So
unfortunate.
that's what the Senate's doing. Also figuring out how they can get these horrible people through even faster
Yes.
by doing a mini nuclear option, which would cut debate time from 30 hours down to as little as 2, depending
Yeah.
on the nomination.
Right. Yeah, all right.
You know?
It's unpopular with us because it'll move a lot more horrible nominees. But
Makes it that
it's
much
not the
easier to
worst.
nuke the filibuster when we have the opportunity with
Yeah.
a Democratic majority.
And, a nuke is a nuke. There's no minis, in my opinion. But I know that's the way that they're referring to it in the media these days because it's a small change that they propose to make with a big bomb. But the bomb's the same size. It's the change you're making afterwards is small. So we're going to nuke this city and only sweep up a little bit afterwards. Doesn't make it a mini nuke. But okay, I get you.
Good point.
I thought I'd try to make one today.
So that's the Senate.
Okay.
Other than, McConnell's floor speech yesterday, did you see that?
Yes, or I think
Where he blamed Democrats for the Republicans in North Carolina trying to steal an election.
That is pretty amazing. He's a very creative person. I guess if you just lie, you can be creative as you want.
He's just, I think the next 2 years with Pelosi in charge of the House is just going to be Mitch McConnell trolling
I guess
everybody all of the time.
Yeah. I mean,
his argument is that, well, see, we were right. There's voter fraud. And if the Democrats had allowed us to put in our voter suppression tactics, if they hadn't fought all of these laws, then we wouldn't have had this problem.
I guess.
Which in some way is true.
Oh,
I mean, if no young people and no black people and no people of color got to vote, then they wouldn't have to.
Then
they wouldn't have to cheat further in order to win.
If you were never allowed to have a ballot because you're black, then they wouldn't have to have paid that guy to steal it from you.
Right.
But that's destroying jobs.
Oh.
Can't have that.
He didn't think about that part, did he?
No, I got you, McConnell. I outfoxed you, you old. Yeah, well, that's a really amazing lie to tell that this is an exclusively a Republican scandal, but Democrats are to blame for it because you were around when it happened. I guess basically is all that actually comes of it. But and this is the reason why everybody spent so much energy insisting that you not refer to North Carolina 9th's problems as voter fraud, because it isn't. It's elections fraud.
It's elections fraud.
So
it wasn't the voters who were doing this. It was the candidate.
Right. The voters are just trying to vote.
Who all of a sudden has really horrible health issues and can't run again.
Oh, that's awful. Well, at least they found a healthy specimen to take his place.
Yes, Boss Hogg. I can't remember his real name.
It doesn't matter, I hope. But yeah, I saw that guy too. He did this on purpose. Just like Trump paints his face orange, this guy on purpose dressed up as, I guess, as Boss Hogg. That's what he was supposed to.
Well, his campaign literature talks about being the boss.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What else would he be? I don't know.
Because in North Carolina, the Republicans embrace their corruption.
Yeah. They love it.
It is an interesting tactic to go through, considering how they lost this election, why they're having to run a new one.
Yeah.
Because of corruption. So,
right.
Yeah, let's put up the guy who models himself after the most corrupt Southern character on television that we've seen in half a century.
Yeah, I guess so. Those lovable rascals.
Lovable rascals.
Oh, well. That was a kind of odd thing. And the pose was all very weird. And the white suit, very weird. And he had, some kind of cigar there. How was he holding that thing? Is like between his third and fourth fingers or something? What is that? I don't know. Is that a thing? Is that...
I don't know what that is. And Apparently it was some kind of replica rifle he was holding, but I'm not sure what the significance of that was. I'm sure there is some white supremacist significance.
Yeah, right.
To the
maybe
replica rifle he was holding, but
right. A model 1488 or something dumb like that. I'm sure. Just throw me a little Nazi
Lord.
reference. Okay, I don't know what that was. It was very shiny and clearly hadn't been fired very often.
Yes.
Or else he's just one of those guys that cleans his gun all the time, which is also not good.
No.
Okay, yeah, that's a bizarro picture for sure. Well, what else happening here?
That's the Senate side.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell, and his buddy Boss Hogg, whose name I will never remember now because
he's got a real name.
He has a real name. We'll look it up for you. Back to what the House is doing that is maximalist. They might not be going to the hitting for the fences, as you would say, on gun safety, but they're doing it on health care.
Okay.
At least Washington Democrat Pramila Jayapal? Pramila? Yeah. I've got to learn these things.
Yes.
Rep. Jayapal she is introducing her Medicare for All bill today.
Okay.
And it's the most comprehensive one we've seen yet in terms of how it transforms our healthcare system.
Well,
it's full-on single-payer government run.
Okay.
It's full-on Medicare with a lot more, including abortion coverage. There goes the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah.
It needs to. It provides vision. It provides dental. It provides long-term care. It done without copays, done without having to copay for prescription drugs, for anything. It's even more expansive than what Sanders had introduced.
Okay.
She would have this transition happen in 2 years, whereas Sanders would have it happen in 4. It's really the maximalist position that Democrats should be taking, putting everything onto the table in terms of transforming our healthcare system.
Okay.
It's even more generous than any of the other single-payer systems out there. I mean, it does get rid of the need for private insurance entirely by doing things like covering vision, dental. How it deals with completely elective things like plastic surgery, I'm not sure. Probably says if you want to have it and you can afford it and it's not reparative, then you're paying for it. But I haven't seen the full legislation. I'm assuming that's what she does. I need to get the bill. It hasn't been. It'll be released today, but it's been pretty quiet thus far in terms of seeing the actual legislation. What she also doesn't do, and she doesn't do it on purpose, is release the finances of it. She hasn't worked out exactly how it's being paid for, or isn't committed to putting that on paper yet.
All right. Because
right now she wants to have the conversation about what our system should be, what it could be, and start that debate to make people think about what should we have in a healthcare system, and then turn to how are we paying for it.
All right.
And of course, how we're paying for it is going to have to be increased taxes, but it's also going to be replacing all of the exorbitant costs we're seeing now for premiums, for deductibles, for copays, for all of the out-of-pocket expenses, having that all applied to covering everyone.
Okay. So actually providing
it's
medical
really
care
ambitious. It's really exciting to see. It's not going to happen in 2 years, but it's smart thinking for establishing the narrative around healthcare, for setting the debate, including things like vision, dental, and particularly long-term care is really important, because those are the things that most people come up against that we're really lacking, particularly dental and long-term care.
Yeah.
And have such an impact on health.
Yes, very true. And a lot of long-term care, obviously, tremendous amount of money spent there. We've all heard
and
those
mostly
statistics.
Public money, because in large part it's Medicaid that's being spent there.
That's when people run out of their
having
money.
that provided through a larger structure will help states. It'll certainly help people. It should be a much more efficient system. So we'll see. It's a really, really, really good starting point for healthcare reform narrative.
Well, that's
and
good.
one that I'm anxious to see our Democratic presidential candidates start talking about.
Yes. Well, that'll have to be on their plates, and if she can color the discussion with the bill, then she'll have achieved her primary purpose of introducing it at this point. I imagine, of course, there will be people who immediately say, well, because it doesn't discuss how it's going to be financed, it's not a serious proposal. But that's the typical talking point that's used to dismiss everything that has come before. Even if they do include, payment schemes, they simply say, well, they're unworkable, and so therefore we're going to stop discussing it. So this one consciously entered into knowing that that's going to be the counterpoint. I hope and I assume she is, I guess her whole plan is to be prepared to meet that with this is no less serious proposal because of that element. I mean, if it's a serious question at all, how you pay for things, well then fine, let's have the serious discussion about it. You can't just say, well, that poses serious issues that we won't discuss.
Right.
That doesn't seem like it makes any sense.
And if we're going to have this serious discussion about how you pay for it, let's open that up to everything we're spending public dollars on.
Right.
Let's talk about the new aircraft. Let's talk about all of the weapon systems that we're wanting to pay for. Let's talk about the border wall, for that matter.
Yeah. I don't think that's unfair at all. It's that if you want to have a serious discussion about finances, that's fine. Talk about all your finances. Let's do it. And I don't understand how you would have the supposedly serious conversation of how do you pay for it unless you first discuss what are you trying to pay for. That's
right.
No less serious, no more serious an approach to anything than these, the people who will push back on this stuff with the how do you pay for it excuse. What are they discussing? They're so serious that we want to know how are you going to pay for it? How am I going to pay for what? I don't know.
Tax cuts.
Yeah, right. They pay for themselves. Maybe they could pay for this too. Tax cuts are so great. Let's just pass on. That'd be an interesting.
We can pay for
measure.
the entire government through tax cuts.
That's I'm starting to think that we have a serious idea here. What if she comes out, the first criticism is, how are we going to pay for it? If she says tax cuts, I think that'd be hilarious. What do you mean tax cuts? The tax cuts can't pay for this. Oh, that's not what I heard. You kept telling, but I heard. That'd be hilarious. Just say we have this massive new program. How are you going to pay for it? Tax cuts. Great trolling.
It would be.
I think you've got a good idea there.
Yeah, let's develop that one a little bit.
Yeah, all right. You do that. I gotta go do some other thing. Yeah, no, that's too much work for me. But it's fun. It's a good way we can do it on Twitter. I can handle it. Okay.
Do that on Twitter, yes.
Yeah, all right. That's a short piece. Wow. All right. So, will she be having a big to-do and a press conference introducing it, or is she going to wait for tomorrow? Or what?
I don't know if there's going to be a big to-do.
She's
The official introduction is today.
Okay.
And I think probably we've been talking about it enough that maybe, she doesn't need to have a big to-do, big press conference. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, because
it's really going to be hard for people to pay attention to anything else happening today.
I think that's true. And I put this bill into this box isn't really that big of a story, I guess. No. All right.
Speaking of boxes, there was a brief Supreme Court story I saw.
Oh.
There were two boxes today, and one of them appears Roberts was with the liberals again on something surprising. Maybe it was a death penalty thing.
Okay. I didn't catch it.
I just saw it float by on Twitter.
Okay.
And now I'm not finding it again.
All right. So a Supreme Court. So I don't know. I'll help you look. But Supreme Court a decision on death penalty, like an individual case, or not a stay of execution?
Individual case. Alabama death row inmate.
Okay.
I'm retweeting this story so
Excellent.
You can see it.
I will look. I'm looking at Twitter, everybody. I'm doing it on the radio.
And now I'm doing it wrong. Retweet there.
Okay.
I hit the wrong button. I was going to retweet with comment, and I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to retweet.
I don't have anything to say about this.
It is ordering a new state court hearing to determine whether an Alabama death row inmate is so affected by dementia that he can't be executed. And this was where Roberts joined the court's 4 liberals in siding with the defendant, which is not necessarily expected from Roberts. We haven't seen him be really anti-death penalty before. But it shows that maybe Roberts is thinking carefully about where the court is right now and what radical moves it might be making and whether he wants those on his legacy.
Okay. I will take, that could be. Every once in a while, it seems like he worries about such things, and that's important and welcome, surprising, unless, of course, he's just trying to keep us from executing Trump for treason. I don't know. That could
because dementia.
Right. He may be thinking ahead. That's okay.
He might be thinking ahead. It's just John Roberts is a very slim reed for our hopes to be resting on for, not having complete Supreme Court horribleness.
Yes.
He could be just biding his time until Ginsburg's gone and who knows? Who knows?
Well, it would be sort of at least his traditional approach to things. I mean, it wouldn't be out of keeping for an actual traditional conservative to say, one of the key elements in imposing the death penalty has to be, a competent defendant who understands what's being imposed.
Yeah, for a serious jurist, that does seem to be a relatively low bar.
Yeah, I mean, they violate it all the time and execute defendants who don't have the intellectual capacity to understand what's happening to them. Is it a white guy?
I don't know.
That might sometimes that drives it as much as anything else. So I'll just say, all right, well, that's out there, and we'll have to sort that one out, and we'll pick that story up. And if it's an important departure from his usual conservative dogma, we'll be sure to note it. You got to give credit. You got to, I guess, enjoy being able to give credit when it's due with these guys.
Vernon Madison is African American.
Okay. Well, good. I mean, it's, like an actual legitimate objection based on competency grounds. It's a welcome change. I don't know how Roberts actually, how he has stacked up on that particular issue, but, Scalia and Alito and others have been a little too excited about executing as many people as they can.
Well, and now they're joined, of course, by Gorsuch and Kavanaugh.
Okay. Yes. Right. And so
this was a 5-4 decision.
Mm-hmm. All right. So a new Kennedy, I suppose, is a possibility. All right.
Which again is a thin reed for our hopes to rest upon.
It was thin then, and it's thin now, and I don't know, but we'll take it, and it may just be he's trying to hold the place together, or maybe the ultimate in conservative jurist ideology now is the country is going to have to be disassembled by the elected branches, not us.
Oh, Lordy.
I don't know. All right. Well, thanks for bringing that one to our attention, along with all the other things, and keeping us up to date on what's actually happening, and will be our headlines to come.
You are most welcome.
Appreciate it, as always.
Go watch Cohen.
Yeah, I guess we'll all go do that, and you can all, those of you who are listening to the podcast, put it on pause and catch up on those things. Thanks, Joan. We'll catch up with you next week, I hope. And,
I hope so too.
Appreciate your coming by. All right, let's all go watch Cohen, and we'll check in with Justice Putnam and his program coming up next, and I'll tell you what I've got on, or what he's got on tap for you as Joan departs. Let's see, the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy up next. Let's see, it would be a bizarre scenario, he begins, if Rod Rosenstein rules that Trump cannot even be mentioned in the Mueller report. Is that in the offing? Wow. Prosecutors say they're still getting help from Russian spy Maria Butina. And a new report reveals Jared Kushner may have lied to Congress, about his shady security clearance. How could he have done otherwise, I ask?
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show.
With David Waldman.
Many more stories, too, including this very interesting one. The U.S. military disrupted the internet access of a Russian troll farm on the day of the November midterm elections. So I guess that worked out pretty well. Also, Colorado Governor Jared Polis took a bold step in a plan to end the undemocratic Electoral College. All that and much more on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Next.